I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. It started like most afternoons, me slipping into the same corner booth at Carson's diner, half hoping no one would notice I was there again. My phone stayed on the table, screen down, as if I might get a message worth reading. It never lit up. She was already moving between tables when I came in. Always busy, always carrying something. But she glanced over, just once, and I swear she smiled before she even reached me. "Coffee?" she asked. I nodded. My throat had gone dry, though I'd been coming here long enough that she knew the answer. She set the cup down, but didn't move away right away. Her hand lingered on the edge of the table, just close enough that I noticed the faint polish on her nails, chipped at the ends. I caught myself staring and quickly looked down at the steam rising from the cup. "Same as last time?" she asked. I looked up, confused. "Turkey Club." "No mayo." Her smile flickered like she was testing if I'd be embarrassed she remembered. "Yeah," I said. "That'd be great." She gave a small nod, like she'd passed some unspoken test, then walked off. I folded the paper napkin on the table in half, then again, until it was a small square. I don't know why. Maybe because my hands had to do something, and I wasn't brave enough to keep them still. There wasn't anything extraordinary about the diner: fluorescent lights, cracked vinyl booths, the same 3 songs on repeat through the speaker. But she made the place feel different, like the air shifted when she leaned in close to place a plate down. When she came back, balancing the plate, she slid it in front of me and said, "You always sit here like you're waiting for something to happen." I blinked. Maybe I am. That made her laugh, low and soft, like it had been caught off guard. "Well, dessert's not on the menu today, but I am." She said it so casually I almost thought I'd misheard. But the way her eyes lingered, the pause before she moved away, it stayed with me. I picked at the crust of my sandwich, trying to replay the words, wondering if it was just her kind of humor. The kind waitresses used to get through long shifts and lonely men at tables. Still, my chest felt warmer than the coffee cooling beside me. The clock above the counter ticked too loudly. I found myself flicking my eyes toward her whenever she passed, catching her laugh with another customer, the tuck of hair behind her ear when she leaned down to wipe a table. I told myself not to read into it. She was probably like this with everyone. But then she looked over, caught me watching, and instead of looking away, she tilted her head just slightly, like she'd been expecting me to. When the meal was over, I left the money tucked beneath the folded napkin I'd been playing with all afternoon. She picked it up before I'd even reached the door. "See you tomorrow?" she asked. I froze, halfway to leaving. "Maybe," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. Outside, the air was cooler than I'd expected. I reached for my phone, thumb hovering over an unsent message I'd typed days ago and never had the courage to send. But before I could, a new one lit up the screen. "Unknown number. Thanks for the laugh. Don't wait too long next time." I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, the diner's neon glow buzzing behind me. For once, I didn't know if going home was the right move. The text stayed on my phone for hours before I convinced myself it was real. Numbers don't just appear out of nowhere, I told myself. She had to have written it down when she took my bill, slipping it between folded napkins like a secret only I wasn't supposed to notice. The next day, I almost didn't go back. I circled the block twice before finally pushing open the diner door, pretending I was hungry instead of restless. She was there, as if nothing had happened, pouring coffee for a trucker at the counter. When she spotted me, her expression didn't change much, just a small curve at the corner of her mouth, enough to tell me she remembered. "You came back," she said when she reached my booth. "You told me not to wait too long." Her eyes flickered with amusement, then softened. "Fair enough. She set the cup down in front of me, her hand brushing mine for just a second too long. We didn't talk much at first. Just the rhythm of her checking on other tables, me pretending to read the menu I already knew by heart. When she finally slid into the booth across from me during her break, my chest tightened like it was something forbidden, and maybe it was. She stirred sugar into her tea, the spoon clinking gently. "I used to come here when I was your age," she said, not looking at me. "This same booth, actually. Back then I thought everything would make more sense by now." The way she said it, half a laugh, half a sigh, made me wonder what she'd lost along the way. "Does it?" I asked. She met my eyes then, steady. "Not really." Silence settled between us, not uncomfortable, but heavy. I noticed how her fingers rested against the cup, the faint lines on her knuckles, the pale groove where a ring might have been once. I wanted to ask about it, but my words got stuck. Instead, I said, "I like it here. Feels less loud than everywhere else." Her gaze softened, like she understood more than I'd said. Sometimes quiet's the only thing that feels safe. For a moment, it didn't feel like a waitress and a customer, it felt like two people sitting still in a world that kept moving too fast. But then reality pressed in, the trucker waving for a refill, the buzz of the fluorescent lights, the years between us. I thought of how my friends would laugh if they knew, or worse, how they wouldn't laugh at all, how they'd just look at me differently. I thought of her, maybe with kids my age, maybe with a past I couldn't fit into. And yet, when she stood to leave, she rested her hand lightly on my shoulder before walking away. Just a passing touch, nothing anyone else would notice. But my skin burned from it long after, and I knew I'd carry that moment with me. I don't know why that moment stayed with me, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next few days blurred into routine again, except the routine wasn't the same. I found myself walking into the diner not just for coffee, but to see if she would sit across from me again. Sometimes she did. Sometimes she didn't. When she did, it was always brief, like she was reminding herself not to stay too long. One afternoon, she slid into the booth without asking, tugging at the cuff of her sleeve like she wasn't sure she should be there at all. "You look tired," she said. I laughed under my breath. "You too. Comes with the job." She stirred her tea, though she hadn't added sugar this time. The spoon clinked against the ceramic, too loud for such a quiet moment. Her eyes found mine, then shifted away. "You ever think about leaving? Just taking off somewhere?" "Sometimes," I said. "But then I wonder if anyone would even notice." Her hand stilled. The silence that followed felt heavier than words. Before either of us could break it, the bell above the door jingled. A man walked in, mid-40s, suit jacket draped over one arm. He glanced around the diner before his eyes landed on her. She straightened immediately, shoulders tense. "Give me a second," she murmured, standing too fast, tea still steaming on the table. I watched her greet him, polite, but not warm. He leaned in close, said something I couldn't hear. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. For the first time, I realized there was a whole history to her life I knew nothing about. When she returned, the smile was gone. She lowered herself into the booth again but didn't look at me right away. "Ex-husband," she said flatly, before I could ask. "Don't worry. He won't stay long." Something in me twisted, part curiosity, part something else I couldn't name. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I reached across the table, not touching her hand, just close enough that she might notice. Her eyes flicked down, then back up. She gave a faint smile that wasn't quite real. The bell jingled again. He was gone. We sat in silence, only the hum of the fridge and the scrape of forks from other tables filling the space. She picked up her cup but didn't drink. You should probably stop coming here so much, she said finally. My stomach dropped. Why? People talk. She glanced toward the counter, where one of the other waitresses had been watching us too closely. I nodded, though I didn't move. I should have stood up. Paid my bill. Walked out. But I stayed. She exhaled, almost a laugh. You don't make things simple, do you? Her hand brushed against mine when she reached for the napkin I'd been folding. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world had tilted, like we were about to step over a line neither of us could take back. And then she drew her hand back, slow, careful. Maybe another time, she whispered. But her eyes stayed on mine long after the words were gone. It happened on a Tuesday night, when the diner closed earlier than usual for repairs. She stepped outside carrying the last trash bag, and I was there, leaning against the brick wall like I had been waiting without admitting it. You walk home? I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, then nodded. Couple blocks. Mind if I? She didn't finish answering, just started walking, and I fell into step beside her. The streets were almost empty, just the buzz of a streetlight and the distant hum of traffic. She kept her hands in her jacket pockets, eyes forward. I noticed the way her shoulders seemed heavier outside the diner, like she wasn't holding herself up for anyone anymore. You don't really belong there, I said after a while. She glanced at me, wary. Where's there? The diner. Serving coffee to people who don't look up. Her mouth twitched, something between a smile and a frown. And you? You always look up. Only at you. Silence. The kind that makes your pulse too loud in your ears. She stopped walking near a bench under a flickering street lamp. Sat down without a word. I joined her, the wood damp beneath us. I shouldn't, she said, staring at the pavement. You're too young. My daughter's your age. I flinched, though I didn't move away. I'm not her, though. I know. She exhaled sharply. That's the problem. Her hands came out of her pockets, twisting together, restless. When I see you walk in, I feel something I told myself I'd never feel again. And it terrifies me. I wanted to reach for her hand, but my own stayed on my knees, clenched. Maybe I feel the same. She finally looked at me, eyes wet but steady. You don't know what it costs to care for someone when you're already tired of breaking. I know enough, I said, my voice low. I know you matter more than the silence I go home to every night. She laughed then, soft and broken. God, you don't even know me. I want to. Her breath caught. For a moment, she leaned back against the bench, closing her eyes like the weight of everything was too much. Then she turned toward me, close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of her mouth, the way her lip trembled before she bit it. If we cross this line, she whispered, there's no going back. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My whole body leaned toward her without permission, drawn to the heat of her shoulder brushing mine, the charged air between us. Her fingers grazed my hand, barely there, as if she were asking without words. The question hung between us, louder than anything either of us could say. Would we? Could we? The next day, she wasn't there. I walked into the diner at the usual time, expecting the familiar brush of her eyes, the half-smile she always tried to hide. Instead, a younger waitress handed me a menu I didn't need and poured coffee I didn't want. She's off today, she said, too casually, like the words weren't supposed to sting. I stayed anyway, staring at the empty space where she should have been moving between tables. My sandwich tasted like cardboard. I left without finishing. The following day, she was back, but different. Her hair tied tighter, her voice sharper, like she'd built a wall overnight. When she came to my booth, she didn't linger. She didn't sit. "Coffee?" she asked. I nodded. Her hands didn't shake, but her eyes avoided mine. "What happened?" I asked when she set the cup down. "Nothing," she said too quickly. Then softer, "Just busy." But she didn't look at me, and that was answer enough. I wanted to press, to say something reckless, but the words jammed in my throat. Instead, I watched her move from table to table, her smile fixed in place like it belonged to someone else. By the time my plate was cleared, she hadn't come back once. Outside, I walked slower than usual, my phone heavy in my pocket. I typed her a message, "Are you okay?" Did I do something? But the cursor blinked back at me until I erased it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through old texts, all 2 of them, rereading her words like they might reveal something I'd missed. They didn't. On the 3rd day, I didn't go to the diner. I told myself I was giving her space. The truth was, I was afraid she wouldn't notice if I wasn't there. But that evening, as I passed by, I saw her outside, standing with a man. Not the ex-husband this time. Someone younger, maybe late 30s. He handed her a set of keys, said something that made her laugh, a real laugh, the kind I thought she'd stopped using. I froze across the street, hidden by the dark. Watched her tuck the keys into her pocket and touch his arm, lightly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't wait to see more. I kept walking, hands shoved deep into my jacket, trying not to imagine all the stories I hadn't been told. Back home, I sat with my phone again. The unsent message still waited in drafts. I added 3 words, "I miss you," and stared at them until my eyes blurred. But I couldn't send it. Not like this. Instead, I locked the screen and set the phone face down on the table. The silence of my apartment pressed in, too sharp, too final. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The booth at the diner stayed empty the next morning. So did I. It was raining the night I finally saw her again. Not at the diner. Outside, by the corner store. She stood beneath the awning, arms crossed, watching the downpour like she was waiting for it to end but not really wanting it to. I almost kept walking. My shoes were already soaked, and my chest carried enough weight without adding more. But something in the way she hugged herself made me stop. She noticed me before I could decide. Her eyes softened, then tightened, like she hadn't expected to see me either. "You disappeared," she said, voice low under the patter of rain. "So did you." For a moment, all we did was stand there with the sound of water hitting pavement filling the space between us. "I thought," she started, then shook her head. "Doesn't matter." "Say it." My voice surprised me, steady, though my hands felt restless in my pockets. She exhaled. "I thought maybe I scared you off." The laugh that slipped out of me was short, bitter. More like the other way around. Her gaze faltered, dropping to the ground. "I didn't know how much to let you see. My life isn't simple." "And you," she trailed off, searching for words. "You deserve simple." I stepped closer, rain dampening the edge of my jacket. "I wasn't looking for simple." Her eyes met mine then, unguarded. "So what are you looking for?" The truth pressed hard against my ribs. I wanted to say everything, how I thought of her when the diner lights buzzed empty, how the silence of my apartment felt louder after her laugh. Instead, I said, "You. Just you." She didn't move right away. The rain shifted, wind blowing drops against our shoes. Finally, she reached out, fingertips brushing the back of my hand. Barely there, like she was testing if I'd pull away. I didn't. I can't promise much, she whispered. Not forever. Not even tomorrow. But right now, her voice broke, soft but steady again. Right now, I don't want to feel alone. The streetlight above us flickered, humming against the rain. My throat tightened. Then don't. We stood like that, hands not quite joined, rain pressing in from every angle, until it didn't matter who saw, or what came next. Her palm finally slid into mine, warm despite the cold. No kiss. No grand words. Just that. A hand, a look, a quiet breath shared between two people who'd run out of reasons not to reach across the space. She gave me a small smile, tired and real. Okay, she said. And for once, it felt enough. It didn't happen all at once. Nothing with her ever did. After that night in the rain, we slipped back into something that looked like routine but wasn't. I still came to the diner. She still poured me coffee, black, no sugar. But now, sometimes, she'd sit for a minute longer. Sometimes she'd walk home with me when her shift ended. Small things. Weeks passed. The world didn't collapse, though I half expected it to. People still came in at 8:47 a.m. sharp for their breakfast specials. The bell above the door still rang, sharp and ordinary. But when our eyes met across the counter, something quiet lived there. Something we didn't need to explain. One Sunday, I found her at the park. She was sitting on the same bench we'd shared that night, the one under the flickering street lamp. This time, daylight caught the strands of silver in her hair. She didn't hide them. She didn't have to. You're late, she said, though I wasn't. I sat beside her. She had tea in a thermos, and without asking, she poured a little into the lid and passed it over. Warm, faintly sweet. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Birds picked at crumbs near our feet, and the breeze pushed leaves across the pavement. Every now and then, our shoulders brushed. Do you regret it? I asked finally, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. She didn't look at me, just tightened her jacket around herself. Not once. Then, after a pause, do you? I shook my head. No, her hand found mine again, same as it had that night, tentative at first, then steady. The touch wasn't fire anymore. It was something warmer. Something that stayed. Life didn't get simpler. She still worked long shifts. I still wrestled with questions I couldn't always name. But the loneliness that once clung to me, the silence of unsent texts, the empty seat at the booth, it wasn't the same anymore. Now, when I lingered at the diner, she'd slip me a second refill without asking. Now, when I paused outside her door too long, she opened it before I knocked. We never called it love out loud. We didn't need to. It was in the way she remembered my bad habit of folding napkins into tiny squares. The way I noticed when she left her tea too long and it went cold. One evening, sitting across from her kitchen table, I realized it, life didn't have to be perfect to feel full. It just had to be shared. She caught me staring, the faintest smile tugging at her mouth. What? She asked. Nothing, I said. But we both knew it wasn't nothing. Somewhere between the black coffee and the tea, between the bench and the rain, we had found something neither of us expected to keep. And maybe that was enough. 3.